Hello, good evening. My name is Catherine Platt and I'm the director of the Hong Kong International Literary Festival. And it's my great pleasure to welcome you tonight to our 21st festival, which is the Rebound edition. And we're now almost halfway through our 10 days of events, which will continue until the 15th of November. So please go to our website, festival.org.hk, and take a look through our brochure and all of the programs that we have on offer. We have some online events tonight and tomorrow, and then starting on Thursday, a full weekend, 4 days actually, of more than 50 events that can be attended in person here in Hong Kong at Asia Society, the Fringe Club, and Tycoon. And we're starting off on Thursday evening with the 2021 Booker Prize winner, Damon Galgut, who will be joining us to speak from London. He's in London, but he will be speaking to a Hong Kong audience on Thursday evening at Asia Society. So please read about that and all of our other events. But this evening, I'm very pleased to welcome poets Alia Al Shamsi, who's joining us from Abu Dhabi, and Jennifer Wong, who's in Guildford in the UK. And they will be speaking with James Shea. And in just a minute, I'm going to hand over to James to introduce them. But just a couple of points, though, first of all, about Crowdcast, the platform that we're on. You can see the chat down the side. Everyone's welcome to put their comments in there, as I see Catherine is already doing. If you have questions, you can click on this Ask a Question box down in the bottom right, and a box pops up there to put questions, and then James can keep an eye on them and bring them in later in the hour. You can also click on a green call to action button at the bottom if you want to buy Jennifer's book, and we'll post an email, post in the chat about how to buy Alia's book. The event is going to stay on Crowdcast until the end of November, so you can watch any time until then. And we will be adding Chinese subtitles as well in a few days and re-uploading that version. So finally, I just would like to thank all of our cultural partners, our sponsors and donors for their generous support, and in particular, an ongoing grant from the Standing Committee on Language, Education and Research. And for tonight's event, we're very grateful to the Consulate General of the United Arab Emirates in Hong Kong for their generous sponsorship and for all of their help working closely with us in planning this event. So thank you to everybody at the Consulate. So now I'm going to turn to our event, to James Shea, who is a festival advisor, and he's also associate, more importantly, associate professor at the Department of Humanities and Creative Writing at Hong Kong Baptist University, where he is also program director of the Bachelor of Arts in Creative and Professional Writing. James is the author of 2 poetry collections, The Lost Novel and Star in the Eye, and a chapbook, Air and Water Show. And his poems and his translations of Japanese and Chinese poetry have appeared in various publications and anthologies. So we're very pleased to have James with us tonight. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Catherine. And let me just welcome everyone from around the world joining us for today's event, which is called An Ocean Away, and it features 2 poets who have undertaken their own distant journeys, both literally and figuratively, as they've lived in different cultures and amid different languages. They've also embarked on their own journeys as writers, exploring their experiences through the art of poetry. The sense of distance implicit in our event title reminded me of a quote that I found when I was reading Edward Said, the Palestinian-American scholar famous for his book, Orientalism. Said quotes a 12th century Christian mystic named Hugh of St. Victor, who said the following, quote, "The man who finds his homeland sweet is still a tender beginner. He to whom every soil is as his native one is already strong. But he is perfect to whom the entire world is as a foreign land. The tender soul has fixed his love on one spot in the world. The strong person has extended his love to all places. The perfect man extinguished his." So with this paradoxical observation that the ideal state of mind is actually to be a stranger wherever one goes, I'd like to open our event by introducing our 2 featured poets, Alia Al Shamsi and Jennifer Wong. They will share a bit about their new poetry collections, read a poem or two from their books, share some advice about writing poetry, and then we'll conclude with questions from the audience. So if you have any questions, just put them into the question box in the corner. Now, Alia Al Shamsi is an author and artist currently working as the cultural programming manager at Louvre Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates. Her book Alia won the Dubai Culture Publishing Award in 2017. And her book Night and Day was one of the UAE's first silent books. In 2020, she published her first poetry collection, The Ocean Sees Through My Soul. Our second poet, Jennifer Wong, was born and raised in Hong Kong. She has several collections, including Goldfish, Diary of a Miu Miu Salesgirl, and her latest book, Letters Home, which won the UK Poetry Book Society Wildcard Choice. She's been a writer in residence at Wasafari. She studied at Oxford and has a PhD in creative writing from Oxford Brookes University, where she now teaches part-time. Her works have appeared in many journals, including Oxford Poetry, Under the Radar, Poetry Review, Magma Poetry, Asian Cha, The Rialto, and World Literature Today. So I would like to please welcome Alia and Jennifer. Thank you for joining us. Why don't we begin simply by asking you to speak a little bit about how your books came to be? Perhaps we can start with Alia. I understand that your book is bilingual and that you wrote it over a period of about 10 years. So I'd be very curious to hear, the origin story of your book. And in Jennifer's case, your book is actually your second full-length book. And I'm curious how it may have been different writing this book as it was to writing Goldfish, your first book. So let's start with Alia.
So thank you, James. Yes, so the book was something that started 10 years ago, a little bit more of my own personal journal entries. So I've been writing for quite some time, but let's say specifically, this was a very difficult period in my life. And I somewhat found it easy to use poetry as a method of healing, of therapy. And ultimately, within the years, it became a tool of reflection. And once I sort of picked up the courage to show it to a few people, and then, I was encouraged to look into publishing it, and sort of that's how it sort of all came together. But it's something that's very intimate to me, and it's something that's very personal, but it's also a journey within itself.
Did you write in Arabic and then write at the end in English, or did you toggle back and forth the entire time?
So this is a very interesting thing. I wrote it in English, but then when I was approached by the publisher, he publishes only in Arabic, but he thought it would be a great way to look at bilingual. Now, with the English language and the Arabic language is quite different. And what ended up happening actually was a very interesting exercise for me, that I would translate the English poem to Arabic, but at times I found it better sounding in Arabic, meaning that I reworked my English based on the Arabic translation. So it's a very interesting thing when you use two languages that are quite different, and different forms of expressions and different ways of expressing oneself. But there's also the opportunity to translate certain expressions into English rather than English to Arabic. So, but yes, so it was a back and forth, absolutely.
Great. Well, I want to come back to this idea of writing as therapy, but Jennifer, would you like to share a bit about your book?
Yeah, sure. I think, I'm fascinated by Alia's story as well. And I was thinking also when I wrote Letters Home, it feels a very different project from Goldfish in some ways, while at the same time it's still probably about home or identity or memories that I have. And because I was mainly shifting quite between England and Hong Kong, and especially quite a period of time when I was writing letters home, I was living in England, and for me it was a matter of like it's a very strong connection to the place where I was born and grew up, and I was thinking about all the things or people who matter to me, and I was just trying to find a way to capture that because they are all very much in my mind all the time. And I think it was really lovely to have Nine Arches Press, understanding that sort of subject matter, because it's quite different from what they used to publish. And I think for me, it's lovely to have that sort of understanding about the place where I was from, and maybe like the people in England, they might not know so well or in such depth about this place, but I was just keen to bring it to them.
Picking up on Alia's comment about therapy, and you said that you were writing this at a period where you're sort of like traveling between the UK and Hong Kong, and having this maybe, I guess, the pressure on relationships that might entail. Did you see your poems as a kind of act of healing for yourself, or was it something different in a way? I'm talking to Jennifer. That's for Jennifer.
Oh, sorry. I think in a way, yes, it is a sort of healing process. Or do you mean the book itself and the poems? Yeah. Or
like, I guess, using Alia's figure of poetry as therapy, do you have that? Do you share that view, or do you see it as poetry as actually like picking at a scab or a kind of rupture, to kind of an irritation even? I mean, I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think for me, like, there's a very close connection. I think Alia's point of this connection, this emotional connection or power of responding to one's feelings is very important to me. Like, as in poetry, is a way of kind of understanding and unraveling what's inside you. Because I think for me, poetry is a lot about discovery. Sometimes I don't even know what I wanted to write, but in the process, I was just trying to think about, places, and trying to kind of evoke in my mind all these places that really I wanted to go, but sometimes you can't, it's not really just 5 minutes away anymore. So I think in a way, maybe you can say that as healing and as a way of kind of responding to nostalgia and in some sense, it's even when I was living in Hong Kong, I have the same sense of nostalgia in some ways, because I know that for us to inhabit all these times and spaces, we can never really capture the same moment in time forever. So in a way, it was a bit of a response to that, and trying to kind of discover what life or what a place means to you.
And thank you. And Alia, I mean, in the way that, you were sort of moving between languages, Jennifer was moving between countries. Was there a lot of physical movement over those 10 years? Were you in different places as well? Or I'm just wondering how, if you were in transit, how that might have affected your work.
So maybe I wasn't in transit, but I echo Jennifer's, some of the words that she said, like identity. So for me, it was more of a inner journey. So I found myself at a moment of time that, I was going through my own divorce. And that also, socially made me think, okay, how do I redefine myself within the community, within the society of being a single mother, working, there are all these questions of like, who am I now, now that this status has changed? And so that is where I say my own personal journey was an inward one of reevaluating things, re-looking at life in a new way, and assuming, you know, breaking from this idea and, you know, role that, you know, this is who I am now. I'm like, is that who I want to define myself as? So a lot of questions came out during these 10 years until I think I found this confidence. But it's also the journey that I think universally we a lot of people go through it. I'm not saying everyone, but when you are in your 30s and you're sort of moving towards your 40s, there's also this sense of, you know, maturing in a way that, you know, life's adversary sort of throws at you, and you sort of mature and you redefine yourself and you become confident of who you are today. So I would say that's my journey with my poetry, is just selections of these moments. And the beauty of it is, in retrospect, I look at it and not only do I see my voice changed, but also my writing improved. So it's on two levels of a journey, you can say.
Great. Yeah, you know, I'd like to ask you each about your work, the language in your poetry, because I find that on the one hand, you have something in common. You're both, I find, quite sincere in your work. The voice comes across as sincere, and yet stylistically, you're rather different. Like in Alia's poetry, your work is very metaphoric. There's a lot of rhyme, plenty of rhyme schemes in your work. Whereas like in Jennifer's poetry, it's very rooted in like daily life, like lots of like concrete images. There's often a narrative structure. There's often a clear speaker. And so maybe a character in some cases. So I'm just, maybe I put a question to each of you, a different question. But for Alia, do you begin with sort of your subject matter for the poem, and then you find the form that fits that? Or are you thinking about rhyme and form first? And then in the case of Jennifer, you know, do you think of your work as very autobiographical or even confessional? Or is there, you know, how wide is that gap between the speaker and yourself, I guess? So, but anyway, let's, well, we can turn to Jennifer first, perhaps.
Right. It's a very good question about language, this contemplation of language. And I think as to whether it's autobiographical, I don't think all of the poems are, maybe some of them are more autobiographical than the others. But sometimes, yeah, like I suppose maybe the parts of it tend to be triggered from personal or kind of like a more, personal journey. Like, for example, some poems have to do with my parents' love story and, you know, sort of maybe my school days and my school friends and so on. But it doesn't, or maybe they might be containing some local places in Hong Kong, but they're not necessarily grounded in 100% reality. So I tend to translate or transform them in my own storytelling. And I think, for example, sometimes when I reflect on the Hong Kong before I was born or after I was born, I try to change them in some ways. And I think poetry has the power to do that because we don't have to tell it as it is. But I also find it's just lovely thinking about language because I suppose many of the Hong Kong people as well, we're bilingual. We're constantly shifting between different languages, and so for me, that's sort of a more authentic way of understanding or representing life. And I guess when you mention about everyday life or everyday places, it's just something that I believe in because I always feel that like poetry doesn't have to be very elitist and it can be to a certain extent, it can be enjoyed by a lot of different people, especially coming from a slightly more working class, or maybe I once heard someone saying like upper working class, but I don't know. Like, so, you know, I just feel that it belongs to everyone. It doesn't have a barrier to in terms.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. There's an accessibility to your work that I think fits with what you just said. That you know, someone can read it and immediately begin to appreciate it. Alia, how about you in terms of?
I mean, yes, it's you know, language is a form of, it's an art form, at least in the Arab world, and I'm sure the rest of the world as well, but it is an art form that we hold very dear to our hearts as Arabs. It's something that we go all the way back, you know, that it's something that, let's say, it's part of our history and our identity is poetry as well, and the language itself, the Arabic language. So I find it interesting that, you know, you highlighted on the metaphor side of it, which is something that you see quite, you know, evidently in Arabic poetry. So even if I am writing in English, I do lend from the Arabic poems the more abstract, philosophical, metaphorical way of expressing oneself. And I truly enjoy, you know, playing with this element from the Arabic poems. I'm also very much influenced by Sufism. So that's something that I also started to see, you know, coming through my work. It's not that I intentionally wanted it that way. I'm saying when I first started writing, it was more of a, something prompt me to this need to write. So I just did it as a, you know, you know, it was just a reaction that I needed to write this. I needed to express this. However, by the end of when I decided, okay, I am looking at publishing, what I actually did is I enrolled at Oxford Online, by the way, and I did a course because I needed to fine tune. So it was very raw, what I had and what I had written, and then I needed to fine tune it a little bit, unify my voice. And mind you, I'm still working on my process and my writing. So it's an ongoing thing. But yes, and then it became more of, let me fine tune it. Let me, you know, adjust a few things here and there. So again, this happened at the very end when before I said, okay, I'll publish. I'm like, I need to do this course. I want to feel comfortable. But today I can tell you, like, I've just published another book, but it's a collective with different poets from the UAE. And there I am more intentional. So I think I know how I want to proceed with what voice and what thematics and what message. So I'm more precise, I think, now. Before it was more of something that was more raw.
Okay, that's interesting. Well, I think this is a good moment to hear your work, to have each of you read a poem or two. I think we could perhaps begin with Jennifer and just share a poem from your collection so we can kind of get it in the ear and
Sure. So this poem I read, which is called Diary of a Miu Miu Sales Girl. I found it, like, it was first published in a pamphlet published by Bitter Melon Press and run by Nina Powell, who's a very good poet herself. And I just thought, like, it's funny because like, I worked very briefly in that fashion world for a while, and I find it fascinating, like, how people have these assumptions about what when someone was coming from China or Hong Kong, you know, what sort of personality or what sort of things interest them, and having and whereas for myself, I always thought, like, there's just such a diverse range of people in all sorts of places. It's just humorous to see all these stereotypes. So, Diary of a Miu Miu Sales Girl. I am wearing a crepe de chine dress and suede stilettos that do not belong to me. I'm carrying nothing but my lies and my absolute lipstick, red as a warning. I am rather good at this smiling game, speaking Mandarin to the customers. The trick is to flatter them, flattered as they already are, being wives of the nouveau riche from a changing China. They wear sunglasses and diamond rings even when they sleep. At home, they play mahjong and drink Longjing, dress only in European ready-to-wear. A tee with velvet trim, Chanel denim jacket with a real emerald collar, flip-flops lined with rabbit fur. They always pay in cash. They have a home in England and in other European cities. For them, flying long haul is more bearable with a pre-flight Swedish massage. More worthwhile if they bring home a Miu Miu bag with the latest buckle. In our home country, we would never have met. But here I have touched their waist, know their bra sizes and their children's names, working in their store in the heart of Mayfair, where each evening I go home with my sore feet, slip out of my black dress like a fish. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Great line about here I have touched their waist, know their bra sizes and their children's names. Yeah. Would you like to read one more?
Okay. So maybe as a contrast, this is something a bit more kind of personal to me. So many Hong Kong or Chinese people, they care very much about soups, and I remember every time, like when someone sent their child to England to study from Hong Kong, the parents always worry about the same thing. Oh gosh, they don't have the Chinese soups. What are they going to do? Like, what is my child going to do? So there's like this kind of sense that how important it is to have these Chinese soups daily. And I remember when I was a child, my mom prepares all these in the house, and she has like these ju fai tong, which is made with pig lung. Actually, it's a bit gross, but it's just reminds me of that sort of authentic thing that we can't get. A personal history of soups. You taught me soups. A lo for tong takes hours in the kitchen. Pig lung, best remedy for coughs. The swelling and collapsing of a massive pink sac filling the basin. Yellow cucumber and cowpea nourishes the skin and clears the throat. Chinese courgettes and lean pork dissipates body heat. My brother and I loved your tomato and fish soup. Your own childhood stemmed from the taste of egg flour broth your mother used to make. Coming home, a bubbling clay pot, steam rising from the lid raised by wooden chopsticks. The juicy cartilage between the softened bones. The butcher in England hasn't a clue if you ask for a soup bone. Say that again? The only one I can make nowadays is chicken and carrot, even without the fresh logai. You said that every Chinese woman must know how to make soups, to catch a good husband. Except that Alex has never cared because he is a European vegetarian. The hot and sour soup they have here, even in Royal China, it's not half as good. It should have 7 ingredients. You can't call it hot and sour without wooden ear and pig's blood. Not authentic enough. I remember the milky white perfection of golden carp soup in our family haunt, the Chilin restaurant. You kept reminding me to make more soups for myself, to build up my immune system, and also for beauty. Last time I called you to say I cannot find the green carrots. They don't grow here. Each year I think of going back because of the soup. Thank you.
Soup is so important in Chinese culture. Even dessert is soup. Alia, how would you like to read something from your work?
Okay. Let me see. So maybe I will actually share the first poem that I read in public. It means a lot to me because again, there's a sense of vulnerability going up and, speaking of something that's very intimate and something that for many years I've kept to myself. But it was the first time I did a reading was at Shakespeare's. It's a bookstore in Paris, if anyone's ever been there. And lucky enough, they had a poetry reading session while I was there. So I said, now or never. So this is the poem I read. Philosophical Musing. Should I read it maybe in Arabic first, and then I'll do the English?
That would be great.
وجود ملتف على فراغ محاولا أن يتخطى حدود سعادة طارئة، سعادة مغروسة في زمن ولحظة عابرة لا تستعاد، بعيدة المنال، هي تلك اللحظة التي عبرت بيني وبينك. The title is Philosophical Musings. An existence coiled around a void, trespassing lines of fleeting happiness, happiness anchored in time. A moment passes, never to be retrieved, in a vast ocean sea, too dark in the deepest depths, too far to reach, to retrieve. A moment that passed between you and me.
I think when you told me that you were that Sufism is important to you, now it suddenly is the key, I think, to your work.
Yes.
Because it now opens up so much. This. How about another one?
Okay. Since we're talking about identity and being from the UAE, I'll read this one that's titled Bedouin. My family is from a tribe, Al Shamsi tribe. So this is for my tribe. So again, I will start with Arabic and I'll proceed then with the English. هذه القصيدة تحية إجلال الهجرة العظيمة التي قامت بها قبيلتي المرتحلة في أنحاء الربع الخالي حتى استقرت أخيرا لتجد لها منزلا في واحات مدينة العين. تبدأ قصتي على رمال حريرية ناعمة مع أول نجمة تظهر لتدرك أن الليل قريب، عندما تكون الأرض والسماء في ظلمة متحدة، وعندما يلتف الصمت كاشفا عن غناء نبضات قلبك. ارتحلت عشيرتي، أطلقت قوافل الجمال في رحلة بحث عن منزل، عن مأوى تحت زخاخ النجوم. ابتهلوا بصلواتهم يا الله يا إله القمر أرشدنا للطريق، وعيونهم تحدق في السماء الشاسعة، حتى أطل من بعيد تشكيل مائي كالنهر، تحفة الأشجار والأزهار المشرقة بتوهج كالأبد. الآخرون أولئك الحمقى هم الذين تحدثوا طويلا عن الصحراء القاحلة، مكتفين بأواهمهم مختالين بها. أما أولئك الذين جابوا الصحاري تحملهم الأسئلة، فسرعان ما ستظهر لهم نخلة الإجابات الباسقة. Bedouin. This is a tribute to the migration of my tribe that traveled across the empty quarter to find a home in the oasis of Al Ain. My story commences on soft silk sand. When the first star appears, you know the night is near. When heaven and earth in darkness are one, when silence reigns and your heartbeat has sunk. My people saddle on camels sought to find a home, a shelter beneath rain showers of light. Allah they prayed, the once moon god, please rise, as their eyes lifted to the meadows of the sky. Formations of rivers, fauna and flora divine, eternally blooming and never to die. Those foolish enough to say this desert is bare, prefer to be lost in their mirages and not care. For those who wander the earth with questions will find answers on the palm of the starlit sky outlined.
This is a ignorant question, but in Arabic, are you rhyming as much as you're rhyming in English, or is it free verse?
It's more free verse. So that is also a challenge when translating poems from Arabic to English. It's easier than English to Arabic because it's not the same way of rhyming. It's different words, different expressions. So personally, I see that the Arabic poem should be treated as a separate poem with its own style and its own way of, instead of trying so hard to bring two ways of writing poetry to sort of come together. There will be moments where it's easier, but there are other times that the style in English does not match that in Arabic.
Huh. Here's another naive question for both of you, but do you have different emotions in different languages? I mean, does it come out differently, your feelings when you're writing in different languages, or not? I don't know. But you sort of alluded to it earlier, Alia, that there may be a difference, but.
So, I mean, if you just take the word love and try to, in Arabic you have, I don't even know the exact number, but levels of love. So when you are talking about love, you can express yourself in different levels and different ways, and each one refers to something differently. So the richness of the Arabic language gives you a variety of ways of expressing yourself, which I don't say one language is better than the other. It's just the way it is in its form and its essence. So whereas there is one way of saying it in English, in Arabic, there are multiple ways of expressing it. But the emotion remains the same, I think, across whatever you're expressing, it does come out. But I find sometimes languages like Latin languages like Italian or French, you have that ability. It's closer. I'm not sure how Mandarin is, or Cantonese, how that sort of plays. It'd be really interesting to hear from Jennifer as well, how that these expressions, these metaphors happen within the language as well.
Yeah. Also beautiful to hear from you about language. And I wish one day I would know how to speak it. But I was thinking, for me, when I speak in Cantonese, I always feel it's much more direct, and it's very much like a very evocative language of the local culture, or these like Chunke or whatever, it's just like a way of bonding with my friends and peers. Whereas when I speak Mandarin, because my mom and my grandmother who passed away, my maternal grandmother, for my grandmother, she used to speak in Mandarin only. And so it always reminds me a bit of her and my mother, how she grew up. And I think it's quite it's a little bit more poetic and subtle in terms of the way you express yourself in Mandarin, whereas in Cantonese, there's a lot of you don't waste too many words. You just say what it is, and so I always find that really interesting. And sometimes I find it also interesting in terms of writing, because we can't write Cantonese, but you can write in Mandarin, either in simplified or traditional Chinese language.
Jennifer, your poetry, you seem very purposeful in how you render Chinese in your work. You'll sprinkle in maybe a phrase in pinyin, pinyin, which is the romanized form of Chinese, or sometimes you'll even use Chinese characters, like on your book cover, you have the title in Chinese characters and English. And so I'm wondering, like, how do you approach rendering Chinese in your work, keeping in mind that most of your readers probably don't know much Chinese at all? Like, and in the notes at the end of your book, you have almost like a kind of pedagogical moment in the book where you're sort of teaching the reader some of these phrases in Chinese that you've used. And so just wondering, yeah, how do you think about Chinese in your work for the reader?
Yeah, I guess in a way it's I was just trying to bring in a sense of the authentic experience or lived experience that I have with the language. And I think sometimes when I wanted certain, like for example, a TV show that I used to watch with my friends, I think it's just so endearing to put in exactly how it was, like 冲山文秀, which is a specific TV show. There's nothing like it, and I was just trying to kind of make a statement about that. Whereas certain things in life, I feel like, you know, it's universal to us all in to a certain extent, and I'm just hoping through that sort of translation, even if it's inaccurate, to bring something to the reader. I sometimes wasn't quite, when I wrote, I wasn't quite sure if the reader will be able to read Chinese or not. So it's all just sort of kind of bringing in a bit of the experience and hoping it can evoke some more memory, or some, maybe ask the reader to imagine it in some ways but you can't. It's more like solving a puzzle, maybe, like, and hopefully that the reader can help to solve the puzzle together.
Yeah, that's interesting. So like you're so faithful to the particularity of the thing that you can't even, like, you have to use that phrase, that original Chinese expression or word to do honor to it. It's interesting. And
in a way,
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, that in a way, that's why I think also people sometimes just assume that Chinese is one language, which is it has its own different dialects, and or everyone, the families, they are all speaking it in different ways. And so I was thinking, for example, Guiga, the Chinese title that I give to the book, it's one of those words that I really enjoy looking at it, because it's the same for simplifying traditional Chinese. And I thought, well, it would be nice if there is some way that we can speak to people without, trying to embrace all these varieties in some ways.
I mean, Alia, have you ever thought about incorporating an Arabic word or phrases in your English poetry, just to sort of, or vice versa, just to experiment? I don't know.
So I've done it before. So I sometimes play with certain words, but it's something that I would do and feel very comfortable, especially when I feel it's not so much because of the sound of the word as much as it is it just makes sense to use that word because I'm referring to something maybe historical or something that is, it just makes sense. Or this part of the world, let's say this part of the world that I'm having that as the saying. But James, do you think it's okay? I just wanted to say something to what a comment on what Jennifer was saying in terms of this universal feeling of emotions and things like that. And I just wanted to add something on that before going into poetry, I've done a few children's books as well. And one of the projects that we had was rewriting stories, sort of like your folklore tales that you have, especially here in the region. And just to let you know, what's so interesting for me was when I started doing a bit of research, I found the same story that I was working on in Scotland and in Korea as well. So it's a very interesting thing that, even stories themselves are, just very closely related, the same theme, the same characters are found across the world. So even with emotions, and I think poetry and themes and subjects, they are very much universal no matter what the language is, whether it's English, Arabic, Cantonese, or Mandarin. I feel that feeling has been felt before. And that's the beauty of, I think, emotion is really what unites us and makes us human at the end of the day. So sorry, I just wanted to.
Yeah, that's nice. I mean, well, look, I want to make sure we have time for questions from the audience, but so I want to encourage everyone watching to write your question in the chat box or in the ask a question feature. You're also encouraged to check out their books and purchase their books. You can click on the link, this green link at the bottom, buy Jennifer's book to access her publisher's website. And then there's an email as well up in the chat box to reach out to Alia's publisher to acquire her book. But while we're gathering questions, perhaps each of you, I'm sure we have a lot of poets and aspiring poets in the audience. Perhaps it might be useful if you could just share perhaps a writing activity or a writing exercise or a kind of even a piece of advice for how you approach sitting down to write a poem. I think it might be fun for the audience to hear how you, what your strategy is for writing sometimes. Jennifer, would you like to begin?
Yeah. I was thinking about my suggested activity may have to do with a field trip for the reader or the audience. And so if you are able to, someday if you try to go to like make your way to a cafe or maybe a local restaurant and try to have a meal, either by yourself or with a friend, and try to observe the surroundings and take notes and try to note down things that you've observed and maybe the interactions between other customers or other diners, and see if you can make a poem out of it afterwards. Because I think very often going to a certain place and being physically there really kind of can give you a lot of evocative imageries that you can use later. And when you write, obviously you don't need to cover everything, and also it doesn't have to be realistic either. You can use your imagination to transform that cafe experience.
That's great advice. Like, get out of your house, get out of your office, and take a walk and encounter something. Yeah, thanks. Alia, how about you? Anything you can share with advice?
Sure. So I'm lucky enough, I work in a museum. So we have plenty of artworks that I feel sometimes when I do feel stuck, you know, I just take a walk in the galleries. Some of my work actually has been prompted and very heavily influenced by art history as well. For example, like it's just, you just go and something moves you. For me, artwork moves me, so I create these scenarios, these narratives within my head. So often I am influenced by what I see, but I also walking really helps. Sometimes I go for walks, and then certain ideas come to mind. I just, you know, if I have my mobile, just write them down and then revisit them later and develop them, or sometimes I just leave them for a while. But yeah, but I would say artworks really inspire me.
Great. Yeah. Thanks to both of you. We do have a couple of questions in our Q&A box here. Let me start with the first one from Jennifer. It says, I've been wondering which poets Jennifer and Alia consider to have been the most influential to them in their poetic development and in the writing of their most recent book. So yeah, that's a good question. You know, who are the poets in particular that have inspired you and your work?
You first.
So I would say Andalusian poetry has influenced me. الولادة بنت المستكفي, who is Andalusian, half European princess that lived in Andalusia. I truly admired her for her, I think, for being very vocal and her bravura, of course, within writing. And one thing that I really like about Andalusian poetry is that it also encapsulates that time period where there was an influence from the Arabic language, but also the Spanish language. So you actually see this merging together within that sort of time period and that time frame. So that's something that also is very interesting and unique.
Could you write her name in the chat box? If I'd be curious, yeah, I could look her up.
Okay.
Jennifer, how about you? Who's a poet that inspires you?
I really quite like Sina Heshenbeck and her work, which also embraces a lot of multicultural or multilingual elements about poetry. And I enjoy Jory Graham's way of capturing the kind of complexity of the mind. And she's very often, she kind of presents rather abstract things, but in a very organic form. And I also enjoy a lot of the Asian American poetry, like Yang Li and Marilyn Chin and so on, and some of the Hong Kong writers. Their work is also really, it's very energetic in terms of expressing about place and identity. And I'm not going to name them because there are so many of them.
Of course, yeah. Who was the first poet? I heard Jory Graham.
Sina Heshenbeck. I hope she pronounced it.
She's fantastic. She's fantastic.
Great. Could you, Jennifer, do you mind writing these poets' names in the chat box? People can Google them. Let's see. We have a second question. This is from Catherine. It says, happiness anchored in time. What does happiness mean for both of you now?
Should I go first, Jennifer? Do you want to go first? Okay. I guess happiness is two things for me: inner peace and being content. Is really being content with what I have right now is all that I need, and just being in the state of inner peace.
I think also similar to Lillian, being comfortable with myself, like who I am, and knowing that I can't be, I can't please everyone, and I am who I love, and that life, you feel belonged in some way and you feel unbelonged in other ways.
Are you happier are you happier while you're writing a poem, or just as you finished a poem, or before you start? I'm wondering if we were to graph your happiness level relative to writing poetry, where does it ebb and flow, I guess, or where's the peak and valley? I mean, for me, like in the middle of writing a poem, it can be agonizing and a very unhappy experience. But if something clicks, it can be ecstatic. So I'm just curious. And then sometimes when you finish writing a poem, you feel a little deflated because trying to do it again is like, it feels impossible to me sometimes. So I just wondered, because you talked about writing as therapeutic, but where is that moment of therapy? Is it in the middle of writing the poem, or does it come later?
Okay, so for me, happiness is a state, right? But you're not always meant to be always happy. So I'm someone who believes what's really important is to honor your feelings, meaning that no one feeling is better than the other. You need to feel the moment and how you feel at that moment. So I may be writing something that I'm sad, and I honor that sadness. And maybe what poetry, when I say therapeutic, is that I acknowledge this feeling, I identify it. Sometimes I don't know that I'm sad or upset or angry until I write it, and then I realize, okay, step one, I'm acknowledging this feeling, and this is how I feel, and I identify it and I understand it, and then I release it. So for me, poetry is almost a release, whether it's being ecstatic, happy, excited, and this is also something to celebrate as well. But it's also important for me to also express other emotions and other feelings. So that is my take on it.
I'm happiest when I'm writing. When I'm writing, there's like this sense that, you just enjoy the moment rather than think too much about the consequence of, is it a good poem or a bad poem?
Right. Yeah, that's the key, is not to have that devil on your head and on your shoulder telling you there's a problem with your poem. You have to kind of put that aside and just be in the middle of writing. That's ideal. Good. Yeah, great. We're sort of at the moment where we may want to conclude. Is there anything that you'd like to say, or that we haven't gotten to, that the listeners should know, or we know how to get your books? If you all have a website or a link or something, you're welcome to put it in the chat box. People can check out your social media or what have you. And we're waiting for Alia to reconnect, but let me just share something about what's coming ahead for the festival, since we just have a couple minutes here. This event that we're watching will stay online until the end of November, and you can view it on demand, and we'll have Chinese subtitles uploaded in a few days. So you can look forward to watching this again or sharing with people. And today is the 5th day of the 21st edition of the Literary Festival in Hong Kong. This is our International Literary Festival. So we encourage you to visit the festival website for more details of more than 70 online and live events between now and the 15th of November, which is the last day. Maybe we can just wait another minute or two. Perhaps Alia will return and we can give a proper goodbye to her. Good. So we have Jennifer's, we have your Twitter. Oh, you're on Twitter.
And I also meant to ask you things about, because you're both writing and teaching poetry, do you think it's kind of, can you somehow, are the two identities very different for you? Or do you think or maybe knowing a lot about poetry really helps you with your own writing process?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't want to dwell on it, but I guess it is. I think ideally, yeah, they're in sync, right? As when you're teaching poetry and when you're writing poetry, there's a conversation happening. You're teaching work that you love, and then you come home and you're immersed in that work, and then you're writing. But I think what's frustrating is the whole bureaucracy of teaching. I think that's what interferes with the creative act. It's for me, but not so much the subject matter. Mm-hmm. And good students are always inspiring. Mm-hmm. But it seems that Alia is here and just perhaps needs to be admitted. Is there a chance just to do that very quickly? Otherwise, we can sign off if we need to. Perhaps she's in the green room.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Maybe it's some trouble to bring her back. So let's say farewell. Thank you, Jennifer, for this event. Our thanks to Alia as well. Our thanks to Catherine and the festival, and also to all the audience members for tuning in. Please try to catch some of the other events. Thank you.